Dare to believe that a straight line can appear curved, or that a static image can seem to move? Welcome to the mind-bending world of illusions. In the vast landscape of our perception, reality is often not what it seems. Every day, our senses gather countless pieces of information, and our brains work tirelessly to make sense of it all. But sometimes, our minds can be fooled, leading us to perceive things that aren't really there. Enter the captivating realm of illusions, where our perception twists and turns, leaving us questioning what's real and what's not. Illusions, in their many forms, are a fascinating testament to the complexity of our senses and the workings of our brain. They draw back the curtain on the intricate mechanisms of perception, revealing that our experience of the world is not a direct reflection of reality, but rather a constructed representation shaped by our senses. Consider, for instance, visual illusions. They defy our understanding of reality by making static images appear to move, or by transforming straight lines into curves right before our eyes. But the trickery doesn't stop at sight. Our other senses can be just as easily fooled. Auditory illusions can make us hear phantom melodies or perceive sounds that oscillate endlessly, ascending or descending in pitch without ever reaching a limit. Then, there are tactile illusions that can make a single touch feel like two, or taste illusions that can turn sweet into sour. These sensory deceptions are more than just curiosities. They offer valuable insights into how our brains process information, highlighting the shortcuts and assumptions our minds make as they strive to construct a coherent picture of the world. So, are you ready to challenge your perceptions and step into a world where nothing is as it seems? In the coming scenes, we'll delve deeper into each type of illusion, uncovering the science that makes them possible, and exploring their fascinating real-world applications. Prepare to question your perception as we dive into the intriguing science of illusions. Ever seen something that isn't actually there? Let's explore visual illusions that defy our understanding of reality. Visual illusions can be both fascinating and disconcerting. They challenge our understanding of perception and reality, making us question if what we see is indeed what it seems. Take, for instance, the classic illusion known as the Rubin vase. It's a simple image that can be perceived in two distinct ways, as a vase or as two faces staring at each other. This illusion reveals a fundamental aspect of our visual processing, the brain's instinct to identify objects and faces, even when the information is ambiguous. Then there's the famous checker shadow illusion, a checkered board with a cylinder casting a shadow across it. Despite what your eyes may tell you, the squares A and B are exactly the same shade of grey. Unbelievable, right? This illusion is a perfect example of how our brain compensates for shadows, highlighting the role of context in our perception. And who could forget about the viral sensation, the dress? Is it blue and black, or white and gold? This illusion sparked debates worldwide, revealing how individual differences in color perception can lead to drastically different interpretations of the same image. So why do these illusions occur? The answer lies in the interplay between light, color, and our brain's interpretation of visual information. Our eyes are like cameras capturing the world around us. They gather light and convert it into electrical signals, which our brain then processes into the images we perceive. But this process isn't straightforward. It's influenced by a myriad of factors, from the quality of the light to the context of what we're viewing. Consider color, for example. We perceive color based on the wavelengths of light that an object reflects. But our perception of color isn't fixed. It can be influenced by the color of the surrounding light and the colors of nearby objects. This is why the dress appeared different colors to different people, depending on their individual color perception and the lighting conditions when they viewed the image. And then there's our brain's role in all of this. Our brain is constantly making assumptions and predictions to help us make sense of the world. It uses past experiences and contextual clues to fill in gaps and resolve ambiguities in the visual information it receives. This is why we see a vase or two faces in the Rubin vase illusion, depending on how our brain interprets the image. So, as we've seen, our eyes can sometimes deceive us. But what about our ears? Have you ever heard a sound that wasn't real? We're about to delve into the world of auditory illusions. These are sounds that trick our ears and minds into hearing things that aren't exactly what they seem. It's a fascinating world full of intriguing twists and turns that reveal the complexities of our perception. Let's start with an illusion you may have heard of, the Shepard Tone. This is a sound that seems to ascend or descend in pitch, endlessly without ever really getting any higher or lower. It's like a sonic barber's pole, spiraling upwards or downwards into infinity. Yet in reality, the pitch isn't changing at all. It's a clever trick, involving a series of overlapping tones that rise and fall in pitch at the same time. Our brains, trying to make sense of this, latch onto one series and perceive it as a continuous rise or fall. Another compelling example of auditory illusion is the McGurk Effect. This illusion reveals how our senses can interact and influence each other in surprising ways. In the McGurk Effect, what we see can actually change what we hear. If you watch a video of someone saying "ba" while the audio plays "ga," you might surprisingly hear "da." This happens because our brains are trying to reconcile the conflicting information from our eyes and ears, creating a completely new sound in the process. But what's the science behind these auditory illusions? Our understanding of sound is incredibly complex and still not fully understood. Sound is a type of energy made by vibrations that travel through the air or another medium, like water or metal. These vibrations enter our ears and are converted into electrical signals by tiny hair cells in our inner ear. These signals are then sent to our brain, where they're interpreted as sound. However, our brains don't just passively receive these signals. Instead, they actively interpret them, using past experience and context to make sense of the information. This is where auditory illusions come into play. They exploit this interpretation process, tricking our brains into hearing things that aren't there or hearing sounds differently than they really are. This exploration of auditory illusions reveals just how complex and fascinating our perception of sound can be. It shows us that what we hear is not always a straightforward reflection of reality, but rather a complex interpretation shaped by our brains. It's a reminder that our senses are not infallible, but rather intricate and sophisticated systems that can sometimes be deceived. Sound can indeed trick our minds, but can our sense of touch and taste be fooled as well? Can you taste a flavor that isn't there, or feel a touch that never happened? Welcome to Tactile and Taste Illusions. Often overlooked, these sensory deceptions remind us that our perception of the world is far from infallible. Let's start with a little experiment called the thermal grill illusion. Imagine an interlaced grill with alternating warm and cool bars. If you were to place your hand on it, you'd expect to feel the distinct sensations of warmth and coolness. But something strange happens. Instead of feeling the alternating temperatures, you feel an intense, almost burning heat. This is a perfect example of a tactile illusion, where our brain misinterprets the combined stimuli, giving rise to an entirely new sensation. Now, let's move on to taste illusions. Have you ever heard of the miracle fruit? It's a small red berry that has a unique property. When you eat it, it makes sour foods taste sweet. This happens because a protein in the fruit, miraculin, binds to your taste buds and alters your perception of sourness. For a short while after eating the miracle fruit, you could bite into a lemon, and it would taste like a sweet treat. This is a natural example of a taste illusion, but illusions of taste and touch aren't just interesting tricks. They reveal something profound about our sensory systems. They show us that our senses don't work in isolation. They're deeply interconnected and constantly influencing each other. Take, for instance, the cross-modal correspondence between taste and touch. Studies have found that the texture of food can influence its perceived taste. Creamy foods are often perceived as sweeter, while crunchy foods might be perceived as more salty, even when the actual sugar or salt content is the same. Or consider the McGurk Effect in the realm of taste, a phenomenon where what we see can alter what we taste. In one experiment, participants were given a plate of fries and a bottle of brown sauce. But the sauce was actually applesauce, colored brown. Despite the sweet taste, participants reported it tasted like brown sauce because their visual perception overrode their taste perception. These illusions serve as a reminder of the fallibility of our senses. They highlight the malleability of our sensory experiences and how easily they can be manipulated. But they also underscore the incredible complexity of our sensory systems and the marvelous job they do in helping us navigate the world around us. And so we come to the end of our exploration of taste and touch illusions, where we've seen that even the most reliable senses can be fooled. But this leads us to a larger question. Why do these illusions happen? As we've discovered, even our sense of touch and taste can be deceived. But why do these illusions happen? Why does our brain fall for these sensory tricks? Let's dive into the psychology behind illusions. Our minds are fascinatingly complex, employing various cognitive processes and brain mechanisms that allow us to interpret the world around us. However, it's these very processes that make us susceptible to the captivating world of illusions. Imagine a brain as an intelligent detective, constantly piecing together clues from our senses to create a coherent picture of reality. But just as a detective can be fooled by red herrings, our brain can be tricked by illusions. This happens because our brain often fills in gaps in perception, creating an interpretation that sometimes strays from reality. The brain's tendency to fill in gaps is known as perceptual inference. It's a survival mechanism that has evolved over millions of years, enabling us to make quick decisions without having all the information. For instance, if we see a snake's tail disappearing behind a bush, our brain infers the presence of the entire snake, prompting us to react quickly. Our brains also make assumptions based on past experiences. This is called perceptual expectation. If we've always seen a certain object in a specific context, our brain expects to see it in that context. So, when an illusion presents that object out of context or in a different way, our brain struggles to reconcile the discrepancy, resulting in the illusion effect. In essence, illusions reveal how our brains prioritize speed over accuracy. They highlight our brain's impressive capability to make inferences and assumptions, albeit with the occasional misstep. But it's these missteps, these illusions, that allow us to appreciate the complexity and ingenuity of our cognitive processes. Understanding illusions helps us understand our brain better. But did you know, illusions aren't just fascinating phenomena, they have real-world applications too? From art to virtual reality, illusions have found their way into various facets of our lives. Artists, for instance, have long exploited optical illusions to bring their masterpieces to life, creating depth and movement on a flat canvas. Consider M.C. Escher's surreal staircases or Salvador Dali's melting clocks, each distorting reality in their unique way. In the design world, illusions are used to enhance user experiences. Ever marveled at the seamless flow of an infinite scroll on a website, or the bigger on the inside feeling in a well-designed room? That's the power of illusion at work. Then there's virtual reality, an arena where illusions truly shine. By tricking our senses into perceiving a digital world as real, VR allows us to scale mountains, dive into the ocean's depths, or walk on alien planets without leaving our living rooms. So, as we've seen, illusions are not just tricks of the mind, but tools that can create fascinating experiences. In the realm of illusions, seeing, hearing, or even tasting isn't always believing. We've journeyed through a landscape of sensory trickery, challenging our perception of reality. We've seen how visual illusions can bend our understanding, creating images that shift and change before our eyes. We've listened to auditory illusions that deceive our ears and minds, proving that what we hear isn't always the truth. We've touched upon the lesser-known tactile and taste illusions, showing that even the most trusted senses can be fooled. And we've delved into the psychology behind illusions, exploring the cognitive processes and brain mechanisms that make these deceptions so compelling. We've also visited the real-world applications of illusions, witnessing their influence in art, design, and even virtual reality. These fascinating phenomena remind us that our perception isn't always reliable, and that our world is filled with more mystery than we might think. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the science of illusions. Remember, the world isn't always as it seems. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll see you in the next video. The enigmatic world of cryptids, uncovering mythical creatures.